Something has just happened that has completely baffled astronomers observing this object. I am talking about a sudden and drastic change that occurred in just a few hours. This change is so rapid and unexpected that it defies everything we thought we knew about how objects behave in space. And what's NASA's official response? They can't explain it. Let me tell you exactly what changed and why it has shocked the entire astronomical community. Just 48 hours ago, 3I Atlas was behaving predictably. We had established patterns, a rotation period of 2.4 hours, consistent changes in surface brightness corresponding to that rotation, and spectroscopic characteristics showing specific emission and absorption lines. Its trajectory was following a predictable path with a slight, trackable acceleration. Everything was documented, measured, and tracked. And then suddenly, everything changed. The first signs came from amateur astronomers. Several observers in different countries reported that 3I Atlas was significantly brighter than expected. Not just a little brighter, but much brighter. In just 6 hours, the object's apparent magnitude increased by 1.8. That's nearly a six-fold increase in brightness in less than a quarter of a day. Comets can brighten due to outgassing, but that usually takes days or weeks, not hours. Professional observatories immediately confirmed this. The Hubble Space Telescope had scheduled observation time and captured the changes in real time. The images are both stunning and disturbing. The object looks completely different. Where we once saw a relatively uniform surface with a few bright spots, we now see intense emissions from one hemisphere. Where we observed faint coma activity, we now see powerful plumes. The object visually transformed in a matter of hours, but the change in brightness is just the beginning. The rotation period also changed. It went from 2.4 hours to 3.1 hours. The object is rotating slower. In space, rotation doesn't change on its own. Angular momentum is conserved. To alter the rotation, you need torque, forces acting at a distance from the axis of rotation. What caused this torque? Natural outgassing can create torque, but calculations show that the amount of gas being released isn't sufficient to explain such a dramatic change in rotation in such a short time. The spectroscopic characteristics also shifted dramatically. Remember that mysterious emission line at 637 nanometers that appeared during the perihelion outburst and then disappeared? It's back, and it's stronger than before. Numerous spectroscopic observations from different facilities all show the same thing. Bright emission at 637 nanometers that shouldn't be there. We still don't know what causes it, but it's present, it's real, and it just reappeared after being absent for weeks. Furthermore, new emission features have emerged in the infrared spectrum, strong emission bands between 2.5 and 3.5 microns that weren't there before. These wavelengths typically indicate organic compounds or complex carbon chemistry. Either the surface composition has changed, subsurface materials have been exposed, or something is actively producing these compounds. All of these explanations are unusual. The pattern of thermal radiation has also changed. Infrared observations show that the object as a whole has become warmer, but the temperature distribution has also shifted. Before the change, we saw a relatively uniform temperature with expected variations between sunlit and shadowed areas. Now, we see hotspots, localized regions that are significantly warmer than the surrounding environment. The hottest spot is approximately 50 degrees warmer than the average surface temperature. This isn't solar heating. It's internal heat or concentrated energy release. The debris field from the perihelion explosion is also behaving strangely. Several fragments that were moving along predictable trajectories have deviated. Not significantly, but noticeably. We're seeing slight changes in velocity of tens of meters per second, but they occurred around the same time as the changes in the main object. It appears that whatever affected the primary object also affected some of the fragments. This is highly unusual. Fragments should be independent after separation, unless there's some connection we don't understand. Dr. Michio Kaku analyzed all of the observational data. I spoke with him directly about his assessment. He was candid. In his 40 years in physics, he has never seen an astronomical object change so rapidly without an obvious cause. Natural processes have timescales. Ice gradually sublimates as solar heating increases. Rotational changes occur over days or weeks due to torque. Spectroscopic characteristics shift as composition changes. Everything changed simultaneously in a matter of hours. Nature doesn't typically work that way. The most troubling aspect is the coherence. Multiple independent characteristics changed almost simultaneously. Brightness, rotation, spectrum, thermal emission, even the debris field. This suggests that a single cause is affecting all these properties. What natural process could explain that? He can think of several artificial mechanisms that could produce precisely this pattern. But proposing an artificial explanation without definitive evidence remains scientifically controversial. NASA's official statement acknowledged the changes, but offered no explanations. They stated that observations are ongoing, data is being analyzed, and preliminary results will be published when available. Typically, when something significant happens with an object we're tracking, we have working hypotheses that are shared, even while emphasizing the uncertainties. This time, nothing. Just an acknowledgement that changes occurred and that they are being studied. This silence speaks volumes. Internal sources at NASA, and I have several people who are willing to speak off the record, describe confusion and intense debate. Different teams are proposing wildly different explanations, none of which fully accounts for all the observations. Some argue that a catastrophic structural failure occurred, exposing internal materials. Others suggest a collision with an unseen small body. Some speculate about exotic outgassing chemistry that we don't understand. And yes, some are quietly discussing the possibility of deliberate activation of dormant systems. This last possibility is what worries people the most. If 3I Atlas contains technology, and that technology was in a dormant or low-power state, and something triggered its activation, you would expect precisely what we are observing: a sudden increase in activity, changes in emission characteristics, hotspots from energy generation, changes in rotation from attitude control systems, even effects on nearby debris if they are somehow interacting or exchanging energy. All of this fits the artificial hypothesis frighteningly well. But let's carefully consider natural explanations, because that's what science demands. First hypothesis: delayed subsurface heating. Solar radiation penetrated through insulating outer layers during perihelion passage and finally reached volatile-rich subsurface materials, causing sudden sublimation and surface disruption. This could explain the increase in brightness and new spectroscopic characteristics if fresh material was exposed. Perihelion was several weeks ago. Heat conduction through rock and ice is slow but calculable. Models suggest peak subsurface temperatures should have occurred days ago, not now. Moreover, this doesn't explain the rotational changes or the coherence of multiple effects. Natural heating would cause gradual changes, not a sudden, coordinated transformation. Second hypothesis: collision with a small, undetected object. A house-sized rock or ice ball collided with 3I Atlas, exposing fresh material, imparting angular momentum, changing the rotation, and causing the ejection of debris and gases. A collision certainly causes sudden changes. We should have detected the collision directly. Multiple telescopes were observing. A high-energy impact causes flashes, debris clouds, shock waves. We saw none of this. The changes occurred without the telltale signs of a hypersonic impact. Furthermore, the probability of a random collision during our observation window is very low. Not impossible, but improbable. Third hypothesis: structural failure. Internal stresses from solar heating and rotation cause a catastrophic collapse of weakened structures, exposing fresh materials and redistributing mass sufficiently to alter the rotation. Cometary nuclei sometimes spontaneously disintegrate. Fragmentation typically shortens the rotation period as the remnant becomes more compact. The rotation of 3I Atlas slowed, which suggests that mass shifted away from the axis of rotation. This is the opposite of what fragmentation usually causes. Moreover, no large fragment separations were observed, which we would expect in a structural failure. Fourth hypothesis: exotic ice chemistry. Perhaps 3I Atlas contains volatiles we don't normally encounter: ammonia ices, methane clathrates, exotic organic compounds. These might sublimate at unexpected rates or produce unusual spectroscopic characteristics. Perhaps what we're seeing is chemistry beyond our typical experience with comets. While exotic chemistry might explain some observations, it doesn't explain the coherence and timing or the specific changes we observe. And we need a very specific, very unusual composition, distributed in a very specific way, to cause all the observed effects simultaneously. It's not impossible, but it requires many special conditions. Fifth hypothesis: electrical discharge. 3I Atlas accumulated a static charge from interactions with the solar wind and then suddenly discharged, causing the observed effects through electromagnetic interactions with surface materials. The energy required for the observed effects exceeds reasonable estimates of electrostatic charge accumulation. Furthermore, a discharge should produce specific radio emissions, which we haven't detected. The hypothesis doesn't explain the rotational changes or the coherent thermal emission. Each natural explanation can account for some observations, but not all. The most honest assessment is that we don't have a natural explanation that fully fits all the data. This doesn't automatically imply an artificial cause, but it does mean we're seeing something beyond our ordinary experience. What if 3I Atlas contains activated technology? Why now? Perhaps a timer programmed to activate at a certain time after perihelion. Perhaps a signal reacting to our transmissions or internal communications. Perhaps proximity sensing, detecting Earth or Mars at a certain distance. Perhaps the perihelion explosion damaged something and triggered backup systems. Any of these events could trigger what we're observing. Sudden energy release creates hotspots. Propulsion or control systems alter the rotation. Transmitters or sensors produce unexpected emissions. Even the impact on debris makes sense if there's communication or coordination between separated components. It's an elegant hypothesis that explains everything with a single assumption: artificial technology. But extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. We have anomalous observations, but are they extraordinary enough? Reasonable scientists disagree. Some say yes. The coherence and speed of changes cannot be natural. Others say we lack the understanding of exotic astrophysical processes to definitively rule out a natural explanation. Both positions are reasonable, but this cannot be ignored. Whatever the explanation, 3I Atlas has just demonstrated behavior we need to understand. If it's natural, we're missing fundamental physics or chemistry. If it's artificial, we're observing active extraterrestrial technology. Either answer is scientifically revolutionary. The Chinese mission is 60 days from intercept. That's the deadline for answers. When their spacecraft approaches 3I Atlas with close-range instruments, we'll get definitive data. High-resolution images will clearly show surface structure. Spectroscopy will determine precise composition. Magnetic field measurements will detect active electrical systems, if they exist. Particle detectors will characterize emissions. Radar will map internal structure. That data will settle this. 60 days. That's how long we have to wait for confirmation one way or the other. But we won't wait passively. Observations continue. Every major telescope with the capability is tracking. We're watching for additional changes. We're monitoring for transmissions. We're analyzing every pixel of every image. If anything else changes, we'll know immediately. Some researchers are proposing active experiments. Send a radio transmission to 3i Atlas and observe the response. Illuminate it with powerful radar and analyze the reflected signal. Some argue that it's sound science. If it's artificial, it might respond, confirming the hypothesis. Others argue that it's reckless. We don't know what we're dealing with, and active probing might provoke an unwanted reaction. I believe passive observation is appropriate until we understand more. We're collecting a huge amount of data with current observations. Let's analyze what we have before actively probing what we don't understand. If it's a natural phenomenon, active experiments won't yield more than passive observation. If it's technology, prudence suggests caution, so as not to provoke additional reactions until we know more about capabilities and intentions. The sudden change has also impacted public opinion. This isn't just astronomical data anymore. A dramatic transformation, a lack of explanation from NASA, and the acknowledgement that something unprecedented is happening. This is front-page news. People are paying attention, they're asking questions, they want answers. Scientific institutions are facing pressure to provide clear explanations. This pressure creates a complex dynamic. Scientists want to be accurate, which requires acknowledging uncertainty. The public and the media want definitive answers, which often aren't yet available. The gap between scientific uncertainty and the public's desire for clarity leads to frustration on both sides. Add to this the possibility that we're observing alien technology, and emotions run high. Managing expectations while maintaining scientific rigor isn't easy. Dr. Kaku's public statements are carefully balanced. He acknowledges that the observations are highly unusual. He notes that natural explanations face difficulties. He states that an artificial origin is a viable hypothesis deserving serious consideration. But he also emphasizes that confirmation requires further study and that premature conclusions are unscientific. He's balancing scientific integrity with avoiding excessive speculation. His personal assessments are somewhat more direct. In conversations with colleagues, he expresses high confidence, over 80%, that 3i Atlas contains artificial components. He bases this on the accumulated evidence, the improbable trajectory, the acceleration at perihelion, the outburst characteristics, the geometric features, the spectroscopic anomalies, the radio signal, and now this sudden transformation. Each element individually might be explained naturally, but their combination increasingly suggests design rather than chance. But he also acknowledges that he could be wrong. History shows that unusual observations sometimes reveal new natural phenomena, not artificial origins. Pulsars were first thought to be alien beacons before being identified as rotating neutron stars. Fast radio bursts seemed artificial until natural mechanisms were proposed. Scientific humility requires acknowledging that what seems inexplicable might simply be poorly understood nature. The current working model among researchers seriously considering the artificial hypothesis looks something like this. 3i Atlas is a reconnaissance probe, possibly very old, sent from another star system to investigate our solar system. It entered on an optimized trajectory to observe the inner planets during its close approach to the Sun. The perihelion outburst was either a deliberate data transmission and component release, or a catastrophic malfunction due to solar heating exceeding design limits. After perihelion, the probe continued to operate in a degraded state. The recent sudden change represents either a successful repair of damaged systems or the activation of backup systems after the failure of primary systems, either the execution of a programmed mission phase or a reaction to an external stimulus we don't fully understand. The changes we're observing are side effects of some technical operations that just occurred. This model is speculative, but consistent. It explains the observations without requiring physics violations or improbable coincidences. It makes testable predictions. Careful study should reveal artificial structures, materials, and functional systems. If this isn't the case, then more detailed data will reveal purely natural composition and processes. That's how science works. Propose hypotheses, make predictions, test with observations. An alternative natural model requires multiple independent, unusual processes occurring simultaneously by coincidence. Exotic outgassing chemistry, creating unusual spectroscopic signatures. Subsurface ice finally reaching critical conditions weeks after perihelion. An impact or structural change altering the rotation, and a completely separate process creating hotspots. Requiring multiple coincidental processes is scientifically unsatisfying, even if not impossible. Let's discuss what the sudden change tells us about timescales, if this is technology. Anything that changes in a matter of hours indicates responsive systems with rapid activation capabilities. This suggests active power generation, not passive systems. This suggests monitoring or triggering mechanisms that detect a condition and react to it. This implies an engineering solution designed for reliability and rapid deployment. Compare this to human spacecraft. Our most sophisticated autonomous systems require careful management and take hours to days for significant operational changes. Transitioning from a dormant to an active state is slow, deliberate, and carefully monitored. If 3I Atlas transitioned from dormant to active, it indicates an engineering philosophy that prioritizes responsiveness over energy conservation or caution. This tells us something about the priorities of the designers. Or perhaps the change wasn't from dormant to active, but from normal to emergency. Perhaps 3I Atlas was operating normally, encountered a problem, and switched to backup systems. The sudden change represents a switch to backup systems with different operating characteristics. This interpretation also implies sophisticated engineering, robust fault tolerance, and automatic backup recovery. Again, this tells us something about design philosophy. Especially intriguing is the impact on the debris fragments. If separated fragments change trajectory around the same time as the primary object, this implies communication or field effects at long range. The debris field now extends for millions of kilometers. For changes to correlate over such a distance requires either preset timing, faster than light communication, or some physical effect we don't understand. Each possibility is significant. If it's preset timing, this suggests sophisticated mission planning with synchronized operations between distributed components. If it's communication, we should be able to detect those signals if we search at the right frequencies with the right sensitivity. If it's a field effect, this would be new physics, unknown forces operating on megameter scales. Some researchers are now tracking the debris fragments more carefully, looking for patterns and trajectory changes. If all fragments adjust in a coordinated fashion, it's compelling evidence of artificial control. If the changes were random or uncorrelated, it suggests natural processes, such as outgassing, affecting each fragment independently. Preliminary analysis shows more correlation than expected, but the sample size is small and uncertainties are large. More data is needed. The 60-day countdown to the arrival of the Chinese spacecraft is capturing public attention. That mission will provide definitive answers to the questions we're now discussing. Close-up images will show whether structures on the surface are natural or artificial. Spectroscopy will determine whether materials are natural or synthetic. Magnetic and electrical measurements will detect active systems. If they exist, we will know. But 60 days is a long time. Anything could happen. 3i Atlas might change again. It might transmit another signal. It might do something completely unexpected, or it might revert to a stable state and remain quiescent until intercept. We don't know. We're constantly observing, anticipating what comes next. Public interest in astronomy is unprecedented. Usually, our work is specialized, technical, and interesting to enthusiasts, but not the general public. 3i Atlas has changed that. Everyone is paying attention because everyone understands what's at stake. If this is the first confirmed extraterrestrial technology, it's the most important discovery in human history. If it's natural but inexplicable, it's still revolutionary for astrophysics. Either way, we're witnessing something extraordinary. The pressure on NASA and other space agencies is immense. They're expected to provide answers they don't yet have. They're navigating geopolitical tensions, exchanging data across borders when some countries want a competitive advantage, and managing public relations, informing people without causing panic or spreading misinformation. They're making strategic decisions about responses, how actively to engage, rather than simply observe. None of this is easy. This is my assessment after reviewing all the available evidence. 3i Atlas has just undergone a rapid, coordinated transformation, impacting brightness, rotation, spectrum, thermal emission, and possibly the nearby debris field. Natural explanations exist, but they require multiple independent processes occurring simultaneously. An artificial explanation, the activation of technological systems, explains all observations with a single hypothesis. The probability of an artificial origin is approximately 70–75% based on current data. That estimate will be refined as new data arrives. If 3i Atlas now remains stable, the probability might decrease, suggesting that the change was a one-time event rather than an ongoing operation. If additional changes occur, the probability will increase, suggesting active systems reacting to conditions. If patterns emerge in the behavior of the debris, that would substantially shift the assessment. Science changes beliefs based on evidence. Astronomers are in a state of genuine shock. We're trained in systematic observation and logical analysis. We're prepared for unexpected discoveries. But 3i Atlas is challenging our assumptions faster than we can adapt. Each new observation seems to require a re-evaluation of what we thought we understood. It's both exhilarating and unsettling. We're in territory where textbooks aren't helpful, because what we're observing isn't yet described in textbooks. NASA can't explain the sudden change because the honest answer is, we don't fully understand what we're looking at. This isn't a failure. It's appropriate scientific humility in the face of truly unprecedented observations. The alternative would be premature certainty, which would be worse. It's better to acknowledge uncertainty and continue investigation than to prematurely offer an explanation that might prove false. 3i Atlas has shocked astronomers because it rapidly transformed in a way we didn't expect and don't fully understand. This change contradicts expectations about how objects behave in space. Natural explanations are possible but strained. Artificial explanations are controversial but coherent. And we will have definitive answers in 60 days when spacecraft study it up close. Until then, we observe, measure, analyze, and debate. And we prepare for the possibility that everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe is about to change, because 3I Atlas has just demonstrated behavior that increasingly looks unnatural. And that will change everything. This is the most exciting and important time in astronomy since Galileo first turned his telescope to the sky. We may be observing the first confirmed extraterrestrial technology operating in our solar system, or discovering exotic natural processes that will revolutionize astrophysics. Either way, 3I Atlas has just shocked us, and it probably hasn't finished yet.